There are places in this world that do not appear on tourist maps. Places where the air feels older, heavier, and untouched by the passing of centuries. As the night settles over Rome and the last echoes of footsteps fade from St. Peter's Square, one such place waits in silence beneath the Vatican. You cannot see it from the outside. You cannot feel its presence through the stone or hear any sound rising from its depths. Yet millions of people walk above it every year, unaware that just below their feet lies one of the most mysterious repositories of knowledge ever assembled in human history. Tonight, I want you to imagine a slow descent into that hidden world. Not the dramatic kind filled with danger or adventure, but a calm, steady walk into the unknown, with a gentle voice guiding you, the way an old narrator would introduce a late-night documentary. Settle your thoughts. Let the world above you quiet down, because what you are about to explore is not merely a room or a vault or an archive, but a story that stretches back more than 12 centuries, a story written in dust, ink, faith, secrecy, and power. They call it the Vatican Secret Archives, a name that has fueled curiosity ever since it first appeared in public documents. Though in recent years, the Vatican has attempted to soften the term, renaming it the Apostolic Archive, the original name continues to linger, heavy with implication, secret, a word that stirs something in the human imagination. For some, it invokes the idea of hidden truths too dangerous to reveal. For others, it suggests a careful guardianship of fragile history, protected from misuse or misunderstanding. But for many, it simply awakens the unanswerable question: what could be so important that it must remain locked away from the eyes of the world? Imagine for a moment passing through the outer halls of the Vatican after dark. The frescoes are dim, illuminated only by low lights meant to protect ancient art. The air is cool and still, and somewhere in the distance, the faintest hum of security systems fills the silence. A guard leads you to an unmarked door. Ordinary, almost disappointingly plain, no grand symbols, no inscriptions, nothing to suggest the weight of what lies behind it. Yet as the key turns and the door swings open, the entire atmosphere changes. It feels as though you've crossed a threshold into another century. The corridor ahead is long, narrow, and impossibly quiet. Thick walls muffle every sound. The floor, polished by the footsteps of generations of archivists, reflects the dim overhead lights. As you walk, the temperature drops just slightly, the way it does inside a well-preserved library. The air smells faintly of paper, old paper, the kind that has yellowed and softened with time. Ahead of you, far beyond the reach of the first lamps, the corridor stretches into shadow, and it is somewhere inside that darkness that the real world of the Vatican archives begins. The numbers alone are overwhelming. More than 85 kilometers of shelving, over 50 miles, containing centuries of human history letters written by emperors. Bullae sealed by medieval popes, decrees that altered the destinies of kingdoms. Trial records from the Inquisition, scientific findings submitted by the world's earliest scholars, personal writings from figures whose names shaped the foundations of Europe. Some shelves contain manuscripts that have not been touched in more than 500 years. Others hold documents that change the course of nations with a single signature. And some sit locked in special containers, sealed from the public, protected by rules that few institutions on Earth enforce so strictly. This place is not simply a library. It is a memory, one meticulously collected, organized, and guarded by the Church for centuries. And yet, despite the historical value of what lies here, access has always been restricted to an astonishing degree. Even scholars, those granted permission to enter, are allowed to see only tiny fragments of the larger collection. The deeper corridors, the sealed rooms, the documents considered privileged, these remain hidden behind layers of authority that only the Vatican controls. Naturally, secrecy invites whispers, and the Vatican's secret archives have produced more whispers than almost any other hidden place on Earth. They say the archives contain letters that could overturn long-taught religious narratives. That buried somewhere in those miles of shelves are ancient manuscripts describing early versions of Scripture, versions different from the ones the world knows today. Some whisper about lost gospels, suppressed writings, or documents from the early centuries of Christianity that challenge established doctrine. Others believe the archives may hold evidence of miracles or evidence against them. There are rumors about forbidden archaeological discoveries, about knowledge passed down by civilizations long vanished, about artifacts too controversial to ever reveal. Some stories drift into pure legend, tales of demonic texts, secret rituals, prophecies locked away from humanity. Are they true? Almost certainly not. But what is true is that the secrecy of the archives gives these rumors fertile soil to grow. And this is where the mystery deepens. The Vatican never fully denies nor confirms the more dramatic claims. Instead, it maintains a quiet stance. These archives exist to preserve history, not conceal it. Scholars may enter if they follow the rules, but even those scholars describe the experience as limited, strictly controlled, and shaped by a long tradition of caution. Why? Why restrict access to documents that could benefit the study of history? Why maintain such tight control, even in a modern age where other institutions across the world have embraced openness and digitalization? Some say it is simple. Some documents are fragile beyond belief, and exposure could destroy them. Others say certain writings contain political or diplomatic information still relevant today, and releasing them could cause harm. But others, especially those who have studied the archives from afar, believe the restrictions exist because information is power. And for 1,000 years, the Church has understood this better than anyone tonight. We are not here to make accusations. We are not here to confirm conspiracies or deny them. Instead, we are here to explore, slowly, carefully, with respect for what is known, and curiosity for what remains hidden. Because whether you view the Vatican as a guardian of history or a keeper of secrets, one thing is undeniable. What lies in those halls beneath Rome has shaped the world more than most people will ever realize. So let your thoughts drift into the quiet of those underground corridors. Picture the endless shelves, fading into darkness. Picture the thick bindings of ancient books, the delicate scrolls, the sealed envelopes bearing the marks of empires long gone. And picture, most of all, the silence. The kind of silence that feels almost alive, as though the walls themselves remember everything they've seen. In the next chapter, we step further inside. We will explore the origins of these archives, what they are, how they were formed, and why they continue to captivate the world. But for now, let this thought linger gently in your mind. Beneath the Vatican, a hidden memory sleeps. And tonight, you and I have just taken the first step toward waking it. For most people, the idea of an archive brings to mind a quiet library, perhaps dimly lit, filled with rows of shelves and the gentle aroma of old paper. A place where scholars move slowly, turning pages with careful hands, whispering to one another as if they are in the presence of something sacred. But the Vatican's secret archives known for centuries by that exact name, are not like the libraries you or I have ever seen. Their structure, their history, even their purpose is wrapped in layers upon layers of complexity, secrecy, and centuries-old tradition. To truly understand what lies beneath the Vatican, you must first understand what these archives are, how they came to be, and why they remain some of the most restricted collections of knowledge in the modern world. The story begins more than 1,200 years ago, long before Italy existed as a nation, long before the Renaissance transformed Europe, long before science had names for the stars or explanations for the world around us. In those early centuries, the Church was not merely a religious institution. It was the central force of stability across the Western world. Empires rose and collapsed. Kingdoms fought, borders changed. But the Church remained, standing through storms that wiped out entire dynasties, and during all that turmoil, it collected information. Letters from kings asking for guidance, reports from missionaries describing distant lands, agreements between rulers that were blessed, approved, or mediated by papal authority. Decrees written on parchment, sealed with wax, and carried across continents by horseback over time, these documents began to accumulate. At first, they were stored wherever space could be found. Rooms near the papal residence, chambers inside the Lateran Palace, small vaults in fortified structures. But eventually the Church realized that what it held was not merely paperwork. It was memory, evidence, history. And history, as time would prove, is a form of power. By the Middle Ages, the Church began organizing its documents more systematically, not out of conspiracy, but out of necessity. The papacy dealt with kings, emperors, scholars, explorers, merchants, generals, scientists, saints, and heretics. Every decision, every negotiation, every doctrinal declaration was recorded. And those records, though written in ink, had the weight of stone. They shaped the political and spiritual landscapes of entire continents. They influenced who would become king, who would lose their crown, who would be excommunicated, and who would be forgiven. With each century, the pile grew larger and larger, until it became clear that the Church needed a permanent, protected, organized repository. This decision, simple as it sounds, marked the birth of one of the most extraordinary archives in human history. In the early 17th century, Pope Paul V formally established what would become known as the Vatican's secret archives. The word secret in this context did not mean hidden or forbidden, the way modern ears might interpret it. In Latin, secretum meant private, pertaining to the personal office of the Pope. These archives were not intended for public use. They were the working documents of the papacy, accessible only to the Pope and those he trusted. But as centuries passed, as myths grew, and as curiosity swirled around the hidden halls of the Vatican, the word secret adopted a far more mysterious aura, and maybe in some ways, it earned it. The archives occupy a vast network of rooms, halls, vaults, and underground passages beneath Vatican City. Some sections are accessible only through guarded doors. Others require multiple keys, held by different officials, each of whom must be present to grant access. There are chambers reinforced like bank vaults, constructed with thick stone and fortified metal. There are climate-controlled rooms where humidity and temperature are monitored with precision, because some documents are so delicate that exposure to the wrong air could cause them to crumble into dust. There are shelves so high they require specialized lifts to reach the upper levels. There are tunnels so long they vanish into the dim horizon before bending out of sight. And throughout it all, there is silence, deep, almost reverent silence. To call the place massive does not do it justice. If you were to walk every corridor, explore every room, pass by every shelf, you would travel the length of a small city, 85 kilometers of shelving, more than 53 miles, a distance greater than the walk from Manhattan to the outskirts of Long Island. And within those shelves are not thousands, not millions, but tens of millions of pages, some written by unknown scribes, others penned by hands that changed the world. Imagine for a moment running your fingers gently over a sealed letter written by King Henry VIII as he pleaded with the Pope to annul his marriage, an act that would fracture Christianity in England. Imagine touching the trial records of Galileo Galilei, the man whose observations challenged the Church and reshaped our understanding of the heavens. Imagine reading the correspondence of Michelangelo as he worked on the Sistine Chapel, describing the stress, the agony, the triumph. Imagine discovering diplomatic reports from centuries ago that recount the political intrigues of Europe, Asia, and Africa. All of this, and far more, lies inside the Vatican archives. But the depth of the archives is not simply in their contents, it is in their structure. Unlike most national libraries or public collections, the Vatican archives are organized in a way that reflects the Church's internal workings. Documents are grouped not by topic or region, but by papal reigns, by departments of governance, by ecclesiastical courts, by centuries-old administrative systems. To navigate these archives, you do not simply read, you interpret, you decipher, you move through layers of history that overlap like sediment beneath a riverbed. A scholar entering the archives is not merely researching. They are performing a kind of archaeological excavation through paper, ink, and time. And yet, access is extremely limited. For most of the archive's history, access was restricted to church officials. It was not until 1881, barely a century and a half ago, that the Vatican opened the archives to qualified scholars. Even then, rules were strict. Only a handful of researchers were allowed inside each year. They could not wander freely. They could request specific documents, but only if they could justify their academic purpose, and only if those documents were not among the restricted collections. They could not photograph, photocopy, or reproduce texts freely. They had to take notes by hand, and even those notes could be inspected upon leaving. Much of the archive remained completely inaccessible, and still does. In 2019, Pope Francis renamed the archives from secret archives to apostolic archives, hoping to reduce the dramatic aura that surrounded the word secret. But the name change did little to alter public perception. After all, the archives remain the same, the documents remain the same, the restrictions remain the same, and the mysteries remain untouched. But what exactly do these archives contain? The Vatican describes them as administrative records, documents related to canon law, correspondence between popes and rulers, financial ledgers, contracts, maps, personal letters, historical papers, nothing more, nothing less, a form of bureaucratic memory preserved across centuries, and in many ways, that is true. Many documents inside the archives do not contain scandals or conspiracies. They contain the day-to-day work of an institution that governs spiritual life across continents, but deeper within the shelves, beyond the catalogues accessible to scholars, lie sections that are rarely discussed and almost never opened. Restricted collections, sealed collections, files related to diplomatic negotiations, political conflicts, internal disputes. Some documents are sealed not for centuries, but indefinitely, their contents known only to a select few, their significance left to speculation. For many people, that speculation is irresistible. Some believe the archives contain early Christian writings that challenge traditional interpretations of Scripture. Others think the Vatican holds scientific knowledge from the ancient world that contradicts modern timelines. Some theorists go further, claiming the archives hide forbidden texts, prophecies, secret technologies, or artifacts that would spark global upheaval if revealed. Most historians dismiss these claims. They argue that the Vatican is not hiding supernatural truths, but sensitive political or diplomatic information, letters that might embarrass governments, records of alliances that could damage reputations, internal debates that could reshape public perception of the Church. In other words, history that is complicated, controversial, or simply not meant for public consumption. But whether the reason is political, spiritual, or purely administrative, the effect is the same. Secrecy deep, unbroken secrecy. And secrecy, as always, gives birth to legend. Yet legends aside, what truly sets the Vatican archives apart is not the possibility of forbidden knowledge. It is the scale of the known history inside them. No other institution on Earth has preserved such a continuous record of human life across continents and centuries. No other collection contains documents from emperors, scientists, saints, philosophers, and ordinary people, all gathered into one place. No other archive has influenced the world as profoundly, and so the Vatican archives remain a paradox. They are at once a fortress and a library, a place of preservation and a place of silence, a treasure of human memory, yet a symbol of human secrecy. As we move into the next chapters, we will walk deeper into those shadows. We will explore the contents kept inside, the limitations placed upon them, the myths that surround them, and the unsettling questions that linger beneath it all. But for now, as you let the calm rhythm of this story settle into your mind, let one truth rest gently with you. Beneath the Vatican lies a memory of humanity so vast, so old, and so carefully guarded that the world may never fully grasp its depth. If the walls beneath the Vatican could speak, if the shelves could whisper their memories, the world would listen with breath held tight. For the deeper you walk into those miles of documented history, the more you begin to understand that the Vatican archives are not simply a repository of papers. No, they are a vast tapestry woven from the voices of kings and prisoners, saints and skeptics, visionaries and tyrants. They contain the best of humanity and the worst of it. And tonight, we are going to walk deeper into their quiet corridors, exploring the treasures and the shadows held within. Imagine entering a room where the scent of parchment is older than the nation you live in. A room where the documents resting on the shelves contain decisions that shifted continents, letters that ended wars or sparked them or prevented them in ways the world never knew. Some of the oldest scrolls inside these archives were written before the idea of America even existed, before the word Europe meant what it means today. Every shelf, every box, every sealed envelope is a fragment of a world long past, preserved so carefully that time itself seems reluctant to touch it. Perhaps the most famous items inside these archives are the letters written by kings and emperors. Monarchs from every corner of Europe once wrote directly to the Pope, seeking approval, support, forgiveness, or intervention. The papacy, for many centuries, was not merely a religious authority. It was a mediator between nations, a referee between rival dynasties, a voice capable of shifting the balance of power with a single decree. And the letters that arrived in Rome reflect this influence with haunting clarity. One such letter still rests within these shelves, a plea written by King Henry VIII of England, petitioning the Pope to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. It is a simple piece of paper, marked by the passage of 500 years, but the words it contains shook Europe to its core. When the request was denied, Henry broke from the Catholic Church, creating a division that changed the spiritual direction of an entire kingdom and set the stage for centuries of conflict. And yet, the original petition, the spark that ignited the separation, sleeps quietly inside the Vatican archives, preserved like an artifact from a storm long past. Then there are the letters from emperors, correspondence from the Habsburgs, from the kings of France, from the rulers of Spain at the height of their power. Some letters beg for peace. Others demand political recognition. Some request blessings. Others hint at threats. But together, they form an unbroken record of diplomacy that spans continents and centuries. They reveal alliances forged behind closed doors, betrayals whispered in private, and negotiations that were never intended to see the light of day. Nearby, in another section of the archives, lies a collection that has fascinated historians for generations. The writings of scientists, thinkers, and artists whose work helped shape the Renaissance. Among them are documents from Galileo Galilei, the man who looked up at the stars and saw a universe far different from the one humanity had believed in for centuries. His trial records, preserved inside the archives, offer a rare and intimate perspective into the clash between scientific discovery and religious authority. They show Galileo not as the mythic figure he has become in modern storytelling, but as a man, frustrated, brilliant, determined, and deeply human. Beside the Galileo documents lie records linked to Michelangelo. Handwritten letters, project notes, financial agreements relating to the construction and painting of the Sistine Chapel. Some letters reveal frustration, delays, disagreements, exhaustion. Others show the passion of an artist who understood that his work would outlive him by centuries. These letters remind us that behind every masterpiece there is a person, a mind struggling, doubting, pushing forward despite uncertainty, and these are only the famous names. For every Galileo or Michelangelo, there are countless others, unknown scholars, diplomats, explorers, and travelers whose letters and journals captured the world as they witnessed it, reports describing lands newly encountered by Europeans, letters from missionaries detailing languages, cultures, and customs far different from their own, records from diplomatic envoys recounting encounters with empires in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. These writings offer glimpses into worlds long vanished, kingdoms erased by time, traditions transformed by history, and societies whose stories survive only in ink preserved beneath the Vatican. There are also documents that chronicle moments of darkness, trials of individuals accused of heresy, records from the Inquisition, testimonies written by trembling hands. Some of these documents offer chilling insight into a period when fear and doctrine collided. Yet even these papers are preserved meticulously, as though the Vatican recognizes that history must be remembered, even when it is painful, even when it reveals flaws within the very institution that preserved it. But perhaps the most intriguing of all are the manuscripts considered forbidden or restricted. These are items not catalogued publicly, or whose catalogues are intentionally vague. Some are believed to be ancient texts, translations of early writings, copies of Gospels no longer included in the biblical canon, or fragments of theological debates from the earliest centuries of the Church. Scholars occasionally catch glimpses of these items in internal references, footnotes, notes between archivists, or mentions in metadata. But access is rare. very rare. Among the rumored items is a collection of correspondence between medieval popes and scientists whose work contradicted religious doctrine. These letters may not contain heresy, but they reveal the complexity of the relationship between faith and science, far more nuanced than modern narratives often portray. Some researchers claim the archives hold early drafts of significant doctrinal documents, showing how ideas evolved before becoming official teaching. Others speak of lost writings from antiquity, translations of books that no longer exist in any other form. Are all these items real? Some are confirmed, others are half-whispered by scholars who glimpsed things they were not allowed to examine closely. And still others belong more to legend than fact. But here, in the dim silence of the archives, the boundary between legend and possibility becomes thin. Yet the most powerful secrets may not be ancient manuscripts or mysterious letters. They may be the papal correspondences that reveal alliances and power shifts of more recent centuries. The archives contain letters exchanged during World War II, diplomatic negotiations during global crises, and internal communications that discuss conflicts, scandals, and political events still debated today. Many of these documents remain sealed, protected not by myth or theology, but by the realities of international politics. But for all the rumors and all the mysteries, the truth is this: the Vatican archives are less about secrets and more about memory. They contain the recorded lives of millions of people, emperors and peasants, geniuses and sinners, believers and skeptics, captured in documents that survived through centuries of war, plague, fire, and human error. They are the closest thing humanity has to a time machine made of paper. Imagine walking deeper into the archives, carrying a small lantern or a soft electric light. The shelves rise like dark cliffs on either side. Boxes stretch out toward the ceiling. The air is cool, still, untouched. As you turn a corner, you see another corridor, stretching farther than the eye can follow. Each step you take is a step into a moment someone lived hundreds of years ago. Every document is a voice, a memory, a story waiting in silence. Some are joyful, weddings blessed, alliances formed. Others are tragic, condemnations written, pleas unanswered, lives changed by decisions made far away. And in this immense labyrinth of human history, one truth becomes clear. The contents of the Vatican archives are not just items, they are echoes of decisions, beliefs, ambitions, fears, and hopes that shaped our world in ways most people never realize. What lies inside these archives is not simply knowledge, it is the weight of civilization. And yet, despite the richness of what they contain, the Vatican reveals only a fraction of it. The rest remains locked away, unavailable to scholars, unseen by the public, untouched by human eyes for generations. Why? Perhaps the next section will offer clues. But before we reach the realm of secrecy and restrictions, let this chapter settle in your mind. Beneath the Vatican lies a universe of history, pages that once dictated the fate of kingdoms, letters that changed the destiny of nations, manuscripts that have not felt the warmth of daylight in hundreds of years, and among them, perhaps something more, something that only the Church knows, and the world can only imagine. The deeper you travel into the history of the Vatican's sealed vaults, the more you begin to understand something subtle, something that doesn't reveal itself at first glance. The secrecy surrounding these archives is not merely a matter of tradition, nor is it a simple artifact of the Church's long and complicated past. It is something more deliberate, something architectural, something cultivated. For centuries, access to the Vatican's secret archives has been one of the most carefully controlled privileges in the entire world, and the rules are not unwritten myths or vague customs. They are precise, detailed, and enforced with a quiet discipline that very few institutions on Earth still possess. To truly understand the weight of this secrecy, you must imagine a world where knowledge itself is treated like a sacred relic, where not every truth is meant for every eye, and where the boundaries of access are shaped not by curiosity, but by hierarchy. In the corridors beneath the Vatican, that hierarchy is as old as the Renaissance, and it still breathes in every room, every locked cabinet, every sealed envelope. Most people, when they first hear about the Vatican's secret archives, imagine a grand hall open only to the Pope himself, or perhaps a few elite cardinals. But the truth is far more intricate. For over 400 years, the archives have been guarded by rules so rigid that even historians, scholars, and clerics must navigate a labyrinth of requirements before they're even allowed to request a single document. A researcher, for example, must first prove not only who they are, but why they're asking. They must declare their purpose with absolute clarity, submit official credentials, and be prepared to justify every page they wish to see. Not every scholar who applies is accepted, and not every accepted scholar gets the pages they ask for. Because in this place, access is not a right. It is a conditional privilege, granted sparingly, monitored closely, and revoked quietly when necessary. Even those who are granted access do not enter the archives freely. They are escorted through a designated entrance, registered by name, assigned a seat, and watched in silence as they work. They are allowed to request a handful of documents per day, never too many, and most importantly, they cannot wander. There is no strolling through aisles, no drifting between shelves, no indulging in curiosity. The vaults themselves remain out of sight. A scholar never touches the shelves with their own hands. Instead, a staff member retrieves the requested document, brings it to the reading room, and takes it away again, the moment the scholar is finished. This system, strict as it may be, is not an accident. It is the product of centuries of discipline. Discipline designed to protect not only the documents, but the Church's narrative of history. Within those stone walls, the past is not simply preserved. It is curated, managed, contained. But behind the rules lies something even more fascinating: a philosophy. A worldview that has guided the Vatican for generations, one that believes not all knowledge should be shared, and that some truths require guardians, not audiences. When you look at it from this perspective, the secrecy becomes almost ritualistic. Documents older than entire nations are handled with the kind of reverence usually reserved for holy objects. A letter from a medieval king is not merely paper, it is a fragment of power. A decree from the Inquisition is not merely ink, it is a reminder of a past the Church does not always wish to revisit. A transcript from a forbidden trial or a personal confession written centuries ago carries the weight of entire lives. And the Church has always been keenly aware of how fragile such truths can be. There are stories, whispered quietly among scholars, of researchers who stumbled upon documents that reshaped their understanding of particular events. Documents that contradicted public narratives or revealed details long buried beneath official histories. Sometimes these discoveries are allowed to stand, sometimes they are not, and sometimes they simply disappear, returning into the folds of silence from which they came. But the restrictions do not end with scholars. Even high-ranking officials of the Church do not have unlimited access. Many bishops, archbishops, and even cardinals may never step foot into the deeper rooms of the archive. The keys to those chambers are limited to a select few, chosen with extraordinary care, trained in the art of preservation and the ethics of silence. Then there is the Pope, the only figure with absolute authority over the archives. But even here, things are not as simple as one might imagine. Popes have come and gone, each with their own relationship to the archives. Some explored them, reading late into the night, seeking forgotten truths. Others barely touched them, preferring to leave the vaults undisturbed. A few even opened portions of the archives to historians, small portions, controlled windows, never the whole. Why such restraint? Why such deliberate secrecy? Part of the answer lies in history itself. The Vatican has witnessed wars, revolutions, schisms, and the rise and fall of empires. It has survived by calculating its steps carefully, guarding its influence with quiet precision. In such a world, information is not only knowledge, it is leverage, it is stability, it is power. But another part of the answer is more delicate. The archives contain stories, human stories, confessions, letters, crimes, secrets shared in moments of fear, desperation, or faith. To open all of it would not merely reveal historical truths. It would expose wounds that were never meant to be public. And then, of course, there is the speculation, the whispers, the theories. Some say the Church keeps the archives sealed to protect its image. Others believe the vaults contain documents that could challenge theological doctrine or rewrite key events in religious history. And some, those who love the world of mystery, think the truth goes even deeper, that the vaults contain artifacts of immense significance, lost relics, forbidden texts, or hidden knowledge that has survived from ancient civilizations. The Vatican itself denies such claims, insisting that secrecy is simply a matter of preservation and respect. But the more you explore the rules, the guards, the careful procedures, and the immense complexity of the archive system, the harder it becomes to accept such a simple explanation. Because the truth is this: no other institution on earth protects its historical documents with such scale, such precision, and such unwavering silence. Consider this. The archives stretch across more than 85 kilometers of shelving, and yet only a fraction of a fraction is visible to researchers. Imagine walking through a grand library, knowing that entire wings, vast aisles of history, are closed to you forever. Not because the books are fragile, not because the ink is fading, but because the guardians of that place have decided you do not need to know what's inside. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Not the legends of hidden artifacts or forbidden manuscripts, not the rumors of secrets capable of rewriting history, but the quiet certainty that somewhere in those halls lies something the Church believes must remain in darkness, something that, if revealed, would shift the ground beneath our understanding of the past. But for now, those doors remain locked. The guardians remain vigilant, and the archives continue their silent watch, deep beneath the Vatican, untouched by time, untouched by curiosity, untouched by the countless footsteps that echo above them in the city of Rome. If the official corridors of the Vatican archives are made of stone and silence, then the legends surrounding them are built from shadows, shadows that have stretched across centuries, changing shape as each generation adds its own fears, its own fantasies, its own unanswered questions. For as long as these vaults have existed, people have wondered what lies behind the doors that even scholars cannot enter. And whenever the world is denied knowledge, imagination fills the space. Tonight, we wander into that imagination. Because the Vatican, perhaps more than any other institution in the Western world, has been wrapped in stories, stories whispered by historians, repeated by storytellers, debated by theologians, and embellished by those who crave mystery. Stories so persistent that even the Vatican itself cannot fully silence them. Some of these legends feel almost too grand to be real, and yet they survive, not as truth necessarily, but as possibilities, as flickers of what might be hidden beneath the marble floors of Rome. Let's step into that world for a moment, slowly, gently, as if turning the pages of a forbidden book. One of the oldest legends whispers that the archives contain documents capable of rewriting Christian history, not altering it slightly, not clarifying a forgotten detail, but shaking the pillars upon which entire doctrines rest. These are said to be texts written in the earliest centuries of the faith, letters, gospels, records of councils, and testimonies from voices that were silenced as Christianity struggled to define its identity. Some claim the vaults contain early drafts of biblical texts, versions different from the ones we know today. Others speak of entire manuscripts rejected by the early church, writings that portray Jesus in different ways, writings that question the structure of authority, writings that challenge accepted narratives about miracles, resurrection, or divine lineage. Scholars often dismiss such claims, but the legends persist, not because people crave scandal, but because the first centuries of Christianity are full of documents that simply vanished, lost to time, to war, to fire, or to secrecy. And once a culture loses a piece of its history, it becomes easy to imagine that someone might have saved it, protected it, hidden it, not to destroy truth, but to shape it. Another enduring rumor claims the Vatican guards the relics of ancient civilizations, objects older than Christianity itself, artifacts brought to Rome by explorers, by missionaries, or by those who believed the Church was the safest guardian of powerful or dangerous knowledge. Some whisper that inside those vaults rests the chronovisor, a legendary device said to have been built by a team of scientists and Benedictine monks in the 20th century, an alleged machine capable of seeing moments from the past, a myth, almost certainly, but the fact that it has been repeated for decades reveals something deeper. People believe the Vatican might possess technology or knowledge far beyond what the world expects from a religious institution. Then there are the darker legends, those involving relics so powerful, so unsettling, that even uttering their names makes people uncomfortable. Objects from the Inquisition, confessions taken under torture, instruments used in exorcisms, tokens seized from pagan rituals in far-off lands. Some say the vaults contain evidence of past atrocities, documents that, if revealed, would cast long shadows across the Church's reputation. Others whisper about artifacts the Church allegedly confiscated because they posed spiritual or theological danger. Fragments of texts from banned sects, ritual objects that do not align with Christian teachings. Even items allegedly connected to supernatural events. In these stories, the archives become less like a library and more like a vault designed to contain power. But not all rumors carry darkness. Some contain wonder. One famous legend claims that the archives contain letters exchanged between the Vatican and great minds, letters the public has never seen, letters from Leonardo da Vinci describing inventions he feared the world was not ready for, letters from Galileo written during his house arrest, revealing thoughts he dared not express publicly, letters from Michelangelo in moments of vulnerability or brilliance. And then there are the rumored correspondences between popes and rulers whose alliances were hidden behind layers of protocol, kings confessing their fears, emperors negotiating secret pacts, queens begging for influence or mercy, powerful figures admitting doubts that would have shaken their thrones. These stories paint the Vatican not as a hoarder of darkness, but as a guardian of humanity's most intimate secrets, secrets entrusted to it by the world's most influential people. In these legends, the archives become a sanctuary of memory. But perhaps the most persistent rumor is the one that feels the most cinematic. The idea that the Vatican protects an entire section of the archives labeled non aperti, not to be opened. A collection of documents sealed not by dust or time, but by decree. Some say this restricted section contains prophecies, not vague spiritual texts, but specific predictions, warnings written by saints, mystics, or visionaries whose words were judged too destabilizing for public release. Among them, according to rumor, lie unreleased portions of the third secret of Fatima, a prophetic vision that has fascinated millions. The Vatican insists it has released everything, but many believe the darker parts remain sealed away. Why? Because prophecies have power, power to inspire, and power to frighten. And the Vatican has always been cautious about fear. As you walk deeper into the landscape of these legends, you find that many revolve around one central question. What truth is so dangerous or so powerful that the Vatican believes the world must not see it? Theories range from the historical to the theological to the fantastical. Some say the archives hold proof that certain saints were mythologized. Others believe the documents expose political alliances between the church and empires that would change how we understand global history. And then there are the whispers, quiet, hesitant, that somewhere in those vaults lies evidence of humanity's contact with other civilizations, ancient civilizations, lost civilizations, or civilizations, not of this earth. It is a theory shared mostly in late-night conversations and fringe books, but it persists nonetheless. Its endurance reveals something about human nature. When an institution keeps 85 kilometers of history locked away, people will imagine what they cannot see, and often what the mind imagines is stranger than what reality can offer. But legends do not grow on their own. They require soil. And the soil beneath the Vatican is rich, because the archives truly are vast, ancient, and guarded. Because the Church has shaped history, and because silence always invites storytelling. Even scholars who have worked inside the reading rooms admit there is much they have never seen. Document requests can be denied without explanation. Certain catalog entries disappear. Some shelves are marked with codes no one outside the administration can decipher. This combination of truth and limitation creates the perfect habitat for myth. And once myths grow, they rarely die. Yet for all the outlandish stories, there is a subtler truth hidden beneath them. A truth that whispers quietly, almost gently. The power of the archives does not come from supernatural objects or forbidden machines, but from the simple fact that they hold the unfiltered, unedited voice of history. No historian, no theologian, no nation has full access to that voice. And when a voice is kept in silence long enough, people begin to imagine what it might say. Perhaps that is the real magic of these legends. Not that they point to secret treasures, but that they reveal the deep yearning people have to understand the past, to uncover the hidden chapters of humanity's story, to know what was erased, forgotten, or deliberately concealed. The Vatican, maybe unintentionally, became the keeper of that yearning, a place where the world's unanswered questions gather in the dark. And because of that, no matter how many times the Church insists the truth is simple, the myths continue to breathe. So the question remains, are the legends real? Some perhaps contain fragments of truth. Others are almost certainly stories built from fear or fascination. But in the end, what matters is not whether every rumor is true. What matters is that so much remains unknown. And where there is the unknown, there will always be whispers as we rise from the dim corridors of the Vatican's hidden vaults. As we climb back toward the light of modern Rome, a quiet question follows us. It lingers like incense in the air, refusing to dissolve, refusing to let go. After all these centuries of silence, secrecy, legends, and shadows, why does the Vatican keep so much hidden? It is a question older than many nations. A question asked by scholars, skeptics, believers, wanderers, and dreamers alike. And tonight, after walking through the stories, the myths, the whispers, and the guarded hallways of the most secretive archive on Earth, perhaps we stand closer than ever to understanding it, but not to solving it, because the truth, like the vaults themselves, is layered. When you look at the Vatican archives from the outside, framed in marble, gold, and centuries of tradition, you see an institution that has survived everything history could throw at it. Wars, invasions, plagues, revolutions, reforms, schisms, and the endless evolution of human thought. And survival demands caution. To the Church, the archives are not a conspiracy vault. They are not a treasure chest of forbidden relics or a bank of dangerous truths. They are a memory, a 1,200-year memory, a memory so fragile that exposing all of it to the world might break more than it reveals. At least, that is their explanation. But the human mind cannot help but wonder. Because whenever knowledge is guarded too tightly, whenever doors stay closed for too long, our imagination steps forward, gently but firmly, to fill the silence. Maybe that's why the archives fascinate us, because they remind us that history is incomplete, that for every document we read, 10 more lie in darkness. For every truth we accept, there may be another buried beneath it. For every official version of events, a hidden chapter waits on a shelf no scholar has touched in centuries. The Vatican does not deny this. In fact, it accepts it, silently. The more we reflect on the vaults, the clearer it becomes that their power does not come from what is inside them, at least not entirely. Their power comes from not knowing, from the possibility, the uncertainty, the unanswered. The archives force us to confront a simple, unsettling idea: that history is not a complete story, but a story we piece together with whatever fragments survive. And the Vatican owns a staggering number of those fragments. Some are beautiful, some are painful, some are sacred, some are dangerous. All of them together form a tapestry of humanity seen through the eyes of an institution that has lived longer than many empires. To release everything would not merely open the past, it would rewrite it. And perhaps the world is not ready for that. Or perhaps the world is more ready than the Vatican will ever be. Either way, the choice is not ours. As night settles over Rome, the weight of the archives becomes almost poetic. Above the vaults, life moves as it always has. Pilgrims walking the piazza, tourists staring at the basilica, bells echoing across the rooftops. But below, beneath layers of stone and silence, the past sleeps, not peacefully, not restlessly, just in waiting. Waiting for the world to change. Waiting for the church to change. Waiting for the right moment, the right hands, the right generation that might one day open doors sealed for 100 lifetimes. But maybe the question is not when the archives will open. Maybe the real question is, should they? Should the world see every letter ever written in confession? Should every sin recorded by the Inquisition be exposed? Should the fears of kings and the secrets of emperors resurface to reshape modern politics? Should every ancient manuscript, true or false, re-enter the bloodstream of belief. The Vatican believes the answer is no, that some truths protect us by remaining in silence, that some history guards the living by hiding the dead, but many believe the opposite, that transparency heals, that light purifies, that the past must be known to be understood. And so, the debate continues, century after century. Perhaps that is the quiet brilliance of the archives. They force us to think, to question, to imagine, to doubt, to wonder what we might do with the truth if we finally held it in our hands. Because in the end, the mystery of the Vatican's secret vaults does not belong to the Vatican alone. It belongs to anyone who has ever asked, what else is there? What lies beyond what we've been told? What part of our history still sleeps in the dark? You and I tonight are part of that long lineage of curiosity, not because we expect answers, but because we dare to ask the questions. And so, we return to the beginning, to the image of those ancient corridors, stretching farther than the eye can see, to the dust of centuries resting gently on forgotten documents, to the sealed boxes that no living scholar has touched, to the iron locks that turn only in the hands of a chosen few, back to the quiet heartbeat of the archives. You may never walk those halls. You may never touch those manuscripts. You may never hear the sound of those doors closing behind you. But tonight, through imagination, through curiosity, through the stories we shared, you stepped closer to them than most people ever will. And maybe that is enough. For now. Because the greatest mysteries in life are not always meant to be solved. Some are meant to be explored gently, slowly, in the dark. Some are meant to whisper, not shout. Some are meant to lull us into thought, not shock us into revelation. This is one of those mysteries. So as you drift into sleep, let one question linger in the quiet. Why does the Vatican hide so much? And what would happen if the world finally saw everything? Perhaps one day, centuries from now, those vaults will open fully. Perhaps one day, the truth will breathe again. Or perhaps the greatest secrets beneath the Vatican were never meant for the world at all. But until that day comes, the unknown remains exactly where it has always been, hidden in the dark, guarded in silence, waiting. This has been Sleep Through the Unknown. Good night, and may your dreams wander gently through the mysteries we may never fully understand.